Sir, do you have proof that you own this land?
The officer's question made HOA President Vivian Ashworth smirk like she'd already won. Clipboard gripped tight. She'd waited 3 years for this, finally shutting down the eyesore Vineyard, ruining her precious property values. 2 squad cars lit up my driveway, red and blue flashing across the grapevines Elena and I planted after her cancer beat her. The air thick with ripening Cabernet mixed with diesel fumes, because apparently growing your own food is a felony in suburbia now.
This man runs an illegal farm,
Vivian shouted for her phone-filming fan club. He's destroying our neighborhood. I pulled out my wallet, hiding a grin. In just 12 minutes, those officers would discover the one fact that would flip this whole valley and Vivian's smug face upside down. What happened next made the entire HOA beg for mercy. Where are you watching from? Let me back up and tell you how this war started. Because it wasn't with police cars and clipboards, it began in a valley where families had grown food for 127 years, until some Beverly Hills lawyer decided agriculture was bad for business. My name's Owen Delacroix, 52, retired software engineer who spent 25 years debugging Silicon Valley's impossible problems. The plan was simple: buy land, plant grapes, live quietly with my wife Elena. Then stage 3 breast cancer tried to kill her. 18 months of chemo, radiation, and that metallic taste of fear coating everything. But Elena fought like hell, and when the doctor finally said remission, we decided life was too precious for someday maybes. We found 15 acres in Millbrook Valley from Frank Kozlowski, a 4th-generation farmer whose arthritis finally beat his stubbornness. This valley had 847 residents, most of them families who'd worked the same soil their great-grandfathers had cleared. The morning fog rolling through ancient oaks, the crunch of gravel under work boots, the sweet scent of earth after rain. This was where people grew things, not stock portfolios. We planted 2 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon vines. Elena researched her Tuscan grandmother's wine recipes while I learned that debugging grape diseases was harder than debugging code. Those vines represented everything: survival, hope, the future we'd almost lost. For 2 years, life was perfect. Then the developers came. Ashworth Estates, 47 beige monuments to suburban conformity, carved from the old Patterson Ranch like a tumor. Each house identical, each lawn regulation green, each mailbox precisely 18 inches from the curb. The kind of place where neighbors call police about basketball hoops and measure fence heights with rulers. 5 years ago, nobody in Millbrook had even heard of an HOA. Now suddenly, this new subdivision was demanding the entire valley follow their community standards. Enter Vivian Ashworth, 5'4", salon blonde, former real estate attorney who got herself elected HOA president before her moving boxes were unpacked. She drove through our farm roads in her spotless white BMW like she was touring conquered territory. That first certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, the bitter taste of coffee going cold in my mouth as I read it. Dear property owner, agricultural activities on your parcel may violate community covenants. Section 4.7 prohibits commercial farming operations. Compliance required within 30 days. Violation penalties, $500 per day. Potential foreclosure proceedings, $500 per day, for growing grapes in wine country. I called her immediately. Mrs. Ashworth, I think there's been a mistake. My property predates your HOA by decades. That voice, honeyed steel with Beverly Hills polish. Mr. Delacroix, this valley has standards now. Your agricultural activities affect property values for the entire community. Perhaps somewhere more rural would better suit your lifestyle. Like growing food was some hipster hobby. 2 weeks later, she showed up unannounced. Elena was outside, 3 years cancer-free, wearing old jeans and gardening gloves, tending our vines in golden afternoon light. She looked strong, alive, everything we'd prayed for during those dark hospital months. Vivian stepped from her BMW, surveyed our property like a tax assessor, and walked straight to my wife. You must be Mrs. Delacroix. That practiced smile, clipboard ready. I wanted to discuss your farming situation personally. Elena smiled back. Isn't it beautiful? We planted these after my treatment finished. Every grape represents hope. Vivian looked my wife up and down. Elena in dirt-stained clothes, hands dark with honest soil, hair covered by a faded bandana. Then she wrinkled her nose like she'd smelled something rotten. Mrs. Delacroix, people like you simply don't understand modern property values. This agricultural aesthetic is inappropriate for our neighborhood standards. Surely there are more suitable communities for your situation. People like you, your situation. That night, Elena gripped my hand tight. 25 years you solved impossible problems, Owen. Time to debug this one. Smart woman. She had no idea I'd already started. Vivian fired the first official shot exactly 1 week later, an emergency HOA board meeting to address the agricultural crisis threatening Ashworth Estates property values. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet when I walked in that Tuesday night. Vivian sat at a folding table like a Supreme Court justice, flanked by 4 board members who looked like they'd been ordered from a catalog of suburban conformity. Behind her, a PowerPoint presentation glowed, "Protecting our investment, the Delacroix problem." The Delacroix problem. Like Elena and I were some equation she needed to solve. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian began, her laser pointer clicking like a weapon, "we have a serious situation. This illegal agricultural operation threatens every homeowner's most valuable asset." Up flashed photos of our vineyard, my irrigation lines labeled industrial equipment, our modest wine storage shed marked unauthorized commercial structure. Even Elena's herb garden got the spotlight. Unpermitted crop production. The sound of her manicured nails tapping against her clipboard filled the silence. Back when I was debugging impossible software problems, I'd learned something crucial. Systems that selectively enforce rules always have fatal flaws. HOAs work the same way. They can only enforce regulations that were legally established and uniformly applied across all properties. Miss that detail, and their entire authority crumbles. Property values in agricultural zones are 37% lower than residential communities, Vivian continued. Every day we delay action costs every homeowner money. I raised my hand. "Ma'am, this land has been agricultural for over a century. My deed specifically..." "Mr. Delacroix." That smile could have frozen wine in the barrel. "Your deed is irrelevant. Community covenants supersede historical land use. Basic property law." Basic property law. From a woman I'd later discover was disbarred in Los Angeles for her creative interpretations of legal basics. The vote was swift and predictable, 4-1 to pursue immediate legal remediation. The only holdout sat in the back row, Frank Kozlowski, the old farmer who'd sold us the land, looking like a relic from when this valley grew food instead of resentment. "This is horse shit," Frank muttered loud enough for the suburban tribunal to hear. "My family's been farming this valley since 1894. You people wouldn't know agriculture if it bit your manicured asses." Vivian's smile never wavered. "Community standards apply equally to everyone, Mr. Kozlowski." That's when I realized this wasn't about property values. This was about erasing agricultural heritage, one farm at a time. The next week, I did what I do best: deep research. The county courthouse basement smelled like forgotten paperwork and bureaucratic decay. Fluorescent lights cast everything in sickly green while I traced deed records through decades of transfers and sales. 3 days of squinting at microfilm and crumbling documents taught me something beautiful. Buried in the original CC&Rs, Section 12.4. Existing agricultural use at time of subdivision establishment shall be permitted in perpetuity, provided such use predates community formation by minimum 5 years. My vineyard didn't just qualify. It had 122 years of agricultural precedent. Armed with documentation, I returned to the next meeting like a prosecutor with evidence. Same burnt coffee, same suburban inquisition, but this time I had legal ammunition. "Mrs. Ashworth, I found something interesting." I placed photocopied documents on her table, the paper still warm from the courthouse copy machine. The original CC&Rs specifically protect pre-existing agricultural use. Vivian barely glanced at my evidence. "Mr. Delacroix, you're grasping at technicalities. The board has voted." "Technicalities? This is your HOA's founding document." Which brings me to our next item. Her smile widened like a predator sensing weakness. "I've filed a complaint with county code enforcement. Agricultural operations in residential zones violate county ordinances. Criminal violations, Mr. Delacroix, not just HOA matters." The taste of copper flooded my mouth, pure rage disguised as shock. While I'd been playing by HOA rules, Vivian had escalated to criminal prosecution, potential jail time for growing grapes in wine country. Frank stood up, his work boots echoing against linoleum. "Vivian, you're making a big mistake targeting Owen. This valley's got long memories for people who hurt neighbors. Threats won't change legal realities, Mr. Kozlowski." "Not a threat. Fair warning." Walking to my truck, gravel crunching under my feet, I felt the weight of escalation. This wasn't bureaucratic harassment anymore. This was warfare. That night, Elena found me surrounded by legal documents and cold coffee. "How bad?" "She's trying to criminalize growing grapes in Sonoma County. Then we fight smarter." That steel in her voice I'd learned to love during her cancer battle. "What do you need?" "A lawyer who understands agricultural law." Elena smiled, the first real smile I'd seen since this nightmare began. "My cousin Rosa, immigration attorney, but she's vicious with property rights cases." "And Owen?" She squeezed my hand. "She absolutely hates bullies." Outside, fog rolled through our vines like nature's blessing. Tomorrow, we'd start fighting back properly. Rosa Martinez arrived like cavalry in a Honda Civic, Elena's immigration attorney cousin with zero tolerance for suburban tyranny and a briefcase full of legal precedents that could make HOA presidents weep. "Show me everything," she demanded, spreading documents across our kitchen table while morning fog rolled past windows. The sweet scent of ripening Cabernet mixed with Rosa's industrial-strength coffee as she dissected Vivian's strategy like a prosecutor building a murder case. 2 hours later, Rosa looked up with the smile of someone who'd found buried treasure. "Your HOA president just handed us her head on a legal platter. She's applying selective enforcement. I count 12 other properties with commercial agriculture violations she's ignored. Chicken coops, home businesses, even a neighbor running an unlicensed llama farm." I'd forgotten this from my software debugging days. Systems that apply rules inconsistently always contain fatal flaws. Document enough selective enforcement and HOA authority becomes legally worthless. But while Rosa built our defense, Vivian escalated to psychological warfare. Anonymous county tips started Tuesday. Code enforcement arrived claiming someone reported unpermitted structures on our property. Our tool shed, built by Frank's grandfather in 1967, suddenly needed modern permits. Elena's book club gazebo became an unauthorized commercial facility requiring special use permits. Each inspection, $150. Each violation, $200. Death by bureaucratic paper cuts. Wednesday brought digital assassination. A Facebook group materialized overnight. Protect Millbrook property values, complete with photos of our vineyard labeled industrial eyesore destroying neighborhood character. Anonymous posts shared our address, encouraging drive-by documentation of our agricultural invasion. Elena discovered it Thursday morning, hands trembling as she scrolled through strangers calling us selfish, inconsiderate, and obviously not from here. The bitter smell of her chamomile tea going cold while she read comment after comment questioning our right to exist in their valley. Friday, Vivian went nuclear with economic warfare. Local businesses received anonymous calls suggesting they reconsider any association with our illegal operation. The wine shop that had agreed to carry our first vintage suddenly backed out. The farmers market revoked our application. Even Frank's feed store got pressure to stop delivering supplies. "Classic real estate intimidation," Rosa explained. "Force you out through financial destruction, then claim community victory." But Saturday morning brought Vivian's biggest mistake during the worst heat wave in 3 years. I woke to silence. No sound of irrigation sprinklers protecting our vines. Outside, I found systematic sabotage. Clean cuts through main water lines that fed our entire vineyard. Professional destruction during peak growing season, when 3 days without water could kill 2 years of growth. The security camera footage was prosecution-quality evidence, a figure in dark clothing at 2:47 a.m. systematically destroying our irrigation with someone who understood agricultural systems. The cuts were precise, calculated for maximum damage, $3,000 in immediate grape loss, $1,200 in emergency repairs. Insurance denied claims as agricultural damage not covered under residential policy. That's when Rosa dropped her bombshell discovery. "I ran background checks on your HOA board." Rosa's smile was sharp as a subpoena. "Vivian Ashworth was disbarred in Los Angeles 18 months ago for client trust fund violations. She borrowed $47,000 to cover personal real estate investments that collapsed. The pattern suddenly clicked like debugging code finally compiling. This wasn't about property values. This was about profit. Force agricultural families to sell cheap. Flip the land to developers for suburban expansion. Profit from the valley's agricultural destruction. There's more. Rosa pulled out a manila folder thick as a phone book. She's listed as consulting agent on 5 recent property sales in the valley. All former agricultural land, all sold under pressure from HOA violations, all now suburban developments. Vivian wasn't just an entitled HOA president. She was running a real estate scheme using HOA power as leverage for personal profit. Sunday evening, as Elena and I surveyed our damaged vines in golden light, unexpected visitors arrived. Frank brought his grandson, the Hendersons from the dairy farm, the Nakamuras, whose family had grown vegetables here since 1952. 3 generations of valley agriculture standing together on our damaged property. "We've been watching this situation develop," Frank said, his weathered hands examining our cut irrigation lines with professional anger. "Vivian's been targeting other farming families too. The Rodriguezes got cited for their vegetable stand. The Finley family's getting fined for their chicken coop. She's systematically attacking agricultural heritage." Mrs. Henderson nodded, her voice carrying 4 decades of valley wisdom. "Time we reminded certain people that this valley was growing food when their subdivisions were still cow pastures." That night, Elena gripped my hand as we planned our counterattack, the taste of determination mixed with the lingering scent of damaged grapes. "She wants to destroy agricultural families for profit, Owen. Let's show her what happens when farmers fight back." Outside, fog rolled through our wounded vines like nature promising healing. Tomorrow we'd start building the coalition that would end Vivian's reign forever. Monday morning brought the nuclear option, legal papers thick as a small-town phone book. Vivian Ashworth versus Owen and Elena Delacroix, malicious prosecution lawsuit demanding immediate injunction to destroy our vineyard, plus $125,000 in damages for willful property value destruction and community sabotage. I stood in my driveway holding those papers, morning fog rolling through grapevines that might not legally exist in 10 days. The metallic taste of pure legal warfare mixed with the sweet scent of Cabernet grapes Vivian wanted eliminated forever. "She's betting everything on one massive strike," Rosa explained, her voice tight with professional concern. "Emergency injunction hearing in 10 days. If granted, you'll have 72 hours to rip out your entire vineyard or face criminal contempt charges. Jail time, Owen. Actual prison." And the financial devastation was breathtaking. Attorney fees, court costs, potential damages, bankruptcy, even if we somehow won. Elena found me that evening calculating our destruction, surrounded by legal documents and the bitter smell of cold coffee. "Honey, maybe we should consider this." She held up an overnight delivery letter. Vivian's final settlement offer. Sell our property to her agricultural remediation group for 55% of assessed value. All legal action disappears. Agricultural remediation. Like our vineyard was environmental contamination requiring cleanup. "She's trying to force us out before we can fight back properly," I said. But Elena's hands were shaking. Not from anger anymore, from exhaustion. 3 years of harassment taking its toll on someone who'd already fought cancer and won. "Owen, I'm tired. Really tired. Maybe she's right. Maybe we don't belong here." That night, I lay awake listening to Elena's restless breathing, wondering if Vivian had finally broken us. Tuesday brought Rosa's counterintelligence breakthrough that changed the war's trajectory. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into your HOA president's finances. Rosa spread documents across our kitchen table with the satisfaction of a prosecutor holding smoking gun evidence. Vivian's in serious financial trouble. She owes $2.3 million to private investors who used HOA properties as collateral for her failed real estate ventures. The pattern was beautiful in its corruption. Vivian borrowed against Ashworth Estates' property values to fund personal investments. When those investments collapsed, she needed agricultural land prices to justify her collateral claims. Our vineyard's property value destruction threatened her entire financial house of cards. "There's more," Rosa continued. "One of her primary investors? County Supervisor Bradley Morrison's brother, Classic conflict of interest. She's been using political connections to pressure code enforcement against agricultural properties. While we'd been playing defense, Vivian had weaponized county government as part of her real estate scheme. But Wednesday brought our hidden ace from the most unlikely source. Elena was stress organizing our purchase documents, her post-cancer coping mechanism for anxiety, when she found papers buried deep in escrow paperwork. "Owen, what's this easement rider? I've never seen it before." My hands trembled reading the document. Property conveyance includes exclusive beneficial rights to Millbrook Creek water allocation, superseding all subsequent subdivision restrictions, community covenants, or municipal limitations. Exclusive beneficial rights, legal language meaning we controlled water access for the entire valley. Rosa nearly spilled her coffee when I called. "Owen, do you understand what this means? You don't just own 15 acres, you own water rights that every house in Ashworth Estates depends on for survival." Thursday's revelation got even better. Rosa's title research revealed the stunning truth. When developers created Ashworth Estates, they assumed county water supply without verifying the source. All 47 homes depended entirely on creek water flowing through our property. "Vivian doesn't just want your vineyard gone," Rosa explained. "She needs your property to hide this water rights disaster. Every Ashworth Estates sale could face title insurance claims if buyers discover their water isn't legally guaranteed." Friday brought community fracture that made valley-wide war inevitable. Pro-Vivian residents organized counter-protests for the upcoming town hall meeting. Ashworth Estates homeowners hired attorneys threatening lawsuits against agricultural families. 3 farming families received anonymous letters. Agricultural activities will no longer be tolerated in modern residential communities. But the agricultural families were organizing too. Frank rallied 4 generations of valley farmers. The Henderson Dairy Farm mobilized their extended family network. Even younger agricultural professionals, organic farmers, specialty crop growers, sustainable agriculture advocates, joined our coalition. That evening, Elena gripped my hand as we surveyed our vineyard in golden light. "I'm done being tired, Owen. These people tried to break us when I was recovering from cancer. Time to show them what happens when you mess with survivors." Sunday night brought Vivian's final desperate gambit. She attempted to sabotage our irrigation again, but this time our upgraded security system caught her red-handed. Clear footage of the HOA president personally destroying agricultural equipment during peak growing season. "She's completely lost control," Rosa observed, reviewing the evidence. "This is criminal behavior from someone facing financial ruin." Tuesday's town hall meeting would determine everything. But now, I held cards Vivian didn't know existed. Water rights that controlled her entire subdivision's survival. Rosa's title research uncovered something that made my 25 years debugging impossible software problems look like child's play. We weren't fighting an HOA president. We were sitting on the key to an entire valley's survival. "Owen, you need to sit down." Rosa spread yellow documents across our kitchen table like a detective solving a murder. The musty scent of century-old paper mixed with morning coffee as she explained what 3 weeks of courthouse archaeology had revealed. "Remember that easement Elena found? It's not just agricultural water rights. According to Spanish land grant records from 1847, you own exclusive water allocation for this entire watershed. Every drop flowing through Millbrook Creek belongs to you." I stared at documents written in faded Spanish ink, official seals from when California was still Mexican territory. The brittle texture of historical paper cracked under my fingers as understanding dawned. "Rosa, what does this actually mean?" "It means Vivian's 47 perfect suburban houses are stealing your water. Every day, without permission, and they have no legal right to a single drop." The revelation hit like debugging code that suddenly reveals a catastrophic system flaw. When developers created Ashworth Estates 5 years ago, they'd assumed county water supply existed. But this rural valley had never connected to municipal systems. Every house, every emerald lawn, every backyard pool survived entirely on creek water flowing through my agricultural property. The original Spanish grant was never legally subdivided when land ownership changed over the decades, Rosa continued, her voice carrying prosecutorial satisfaction. Modern California law recognizes these grants as superior to any subdivision claims or municipal ordinances. Elena set down her coffee cup with trembling hands, not from fear anymore, but from the intoxicating realization of absolute power. "So when Vivian claims our vineyard threatens property values, Our vineyard is what prevents her subdivision from collapsing entirely, I finished, the irony tasting sweeter than aged Cabernet. She's been trying to destroy the only thing keeping her investment legal. The mathematical beauty was perfect. During California's next drought emergency, I could legally restrict creek flow to agricultural use only. Ashworth Estates would face trucked water costs or expensive county connections. Either option would obliterate property values permanently. Environmental impact studies show Ashworth Estates consumes 340% more water than this creek historically provided during dry seasons, Rosa explained. They're not just using your water illegally, they're overconsumpting a resource they never owned. I walked to our kitchen window, looking over grapevines that had transformed from hobby to weapon overnight. The sound of our irrigation sprinklers carried new meaning. Every drop nourishing our agricultural dreams was water Vivian's residents consumed without legal authority. There's something else, Rosa said, pulling out real estate records thick as phone books. Vivian's been hiding this water rights problem from every Ashworth Estates buyer. That's federal fraud, knowingly concealing title defects that affect property value. Elena joined me at the window, her reflection in glass showing the smile I'd fallen in love with 30 years ago. Honey, remember when you said you'd debug this problem? I found the root cause, I said, understanding flooding through me like water through creek channels. The entire system's built on a foundation that doesn't exist. Owen, Rosa said, organizing documents with legal precision. You don't just own 15 acres in this valley. You own this valley's survival. And tomorrow we're going to explain that to Vivian in terms she'll understand. That night, Elena and I walked our vineyard under stars reflecting off creek water that belonged entirely to us. 3 years ago, these vines represented hope after cancer. Now they represented justice after oppression. The fog rolling through our valley felt like nature's blessing on the reckoning coming tomorrow. Tuesday morning, our kitchen became mission control for the most satisfying revenge plot I'd ever debugged. Rosa spread legal documents across every surface, while Elena brewed coffee strong enough to fuel courtroom warfare. The sweet scent of ripening grapes outside mixed with the bitter taste of strategic planning. 10 days until Vivian's injunction hearing, Rosa announced, her voice carrying prosecutorial hunger. She expects us to beg the court to save our little vineyard. Instead, we're dropping a legal nuclear bomb that could destroy her entire subdivision. But I wanted more than legal victory. 25 years fixing impossible software problems had taught me that elegant solutions solve multiple issues simultaneously. We weren't just beating Vivian, we were rebuilding this valley's agricultural soul and creating a template for every farming family fighting suburban tyranny. First mission, rally the troops. Frank Kozlowski arrived with reinforcements. 3 generations of valley farmers carrying manila folders thick with documentation. The smell of diesel exhaust and honest work boots filled our driveway as agricultural families shared war stories. Henderson Dairy Farm, cited for commercial livestock odors. Frank read from his list. Nakamura Vegetables, fined for unauthorized roadside commerce. Rodriguez Organic Herbs, threatened with foreclosure over agricultural aesthetic violations. Elena started her own intelligence operation. Millbrook Valley Oral History Project. Seemingly innocent interviews with farming families that happened to occur near recording devices, creating public records of community concerns before our courtroom ambush. So the HOA pressure affected your family farm operations how exactly? Elena would ask sweetly, digital recorder capturing every detail of harassment patterns. Meanwhile, I designed our technical ace, water monitoring systems using skills that once debugged billion-dollar software problems. Arduino-based sensors tracking creek flow, automated data logging, cellular upload to tamper-proof cloud storage. The beauty was simplicity. Each sensor cost $37 and could be assembled by anyone with basic electronics knowledge. Open-source code, downloadable from agricultural extension websites. Democratic technology solving aristocratic oppression. Water rights monitoring isn't rocket science, I explained to Elena while installing sensors camouflaged as creek maintenance equipment. Flow meters measure consumption, timestamps prove usage patterns, GPS coordinates confirm locations, basic engineering creating bulletproof evidence. But our masterpiece was psychological warfare designed to trigger Vivian's most desperate mistakes. We needed her to escalate harassment until she committed documentable crimes during maximum public scrutiny. Elena suggested perfect bait. Social media posts announcing vineyard expansion. Photos of irrigation equipment deliveries, construction permits, agricultural machinery. Nothing illegal, just farming families exercising constitutional rights to grow food on their own land. She'll panic about water consumption, Elena predicted with surgical precision. Everything we know suggests she can't afford agricultural expansion when her subdivision survives on stolen water. Rosa coordinated legal bombardment for maximum psychological pressure, simultaneous filings, declaratory judgment on water rights, state licensing complaints for unlicensed real estate practice, federal fraud investigation requests for buyer disclosure violations. Classic overwhelming force doctrine, Rosa explained while organizing attack documents. Civil, criminal, and administrative exposure converging simultaneously. Most people crack under single front pressure. We're hitting her from 6 directions at once. Environmental regulations provided additional ammunition. California drought law prioritized agricultural water use over residential landscaping. Our vineyard qualified for protection as beneficial agricultural use, while Ashworth Estates' emerald lawns represented non-essential residential consumption. Translation: during the next drought emergency, I could legally cut water to 47 suburban houses to protect 2 acres of grapes. Thursday brought media strategy that would transform local HOA dispute into statewide agricultural rights story. Rosa's journalism contacts received background briefings about water rights case study illustrating suburban development impact on historical farming communities. Frame this correctly, and you're not just fighting one power-hungry HOA president, Rosa explained. You're defending agricultural heritage against corporate land grabs disguised as community development. Saturday's Millbrook Heritage Festival would position our coalition as valley defenders rather than troublemakers. Frank organized vintage tractor displays, Elena coordinated historical exhibits, local restaurants featured farm-to-table menus showcasing produce grown within 5 miles. Perfect timing. Community celebration the weekend before courtroom confrontation, establishing agricultural families as authentic valley stakeholders defending tradition against outside exploitation. The final component was pure engineering elegance. Sunday night, I completed installation of our monitoring network. 17 sensors tracking every drop flowing through Millbrook Creek. Real-time dashboards showing Ashworth Estates consuming 340% more water than creek capacity during dry seasons. Data doesn't lie, I told Elena as we tested the system, watching consumption metrics update every 15 seconds. When Vivian claims our vineyard threatens property values, we'll have mathematical proof her subdivision threatens valley survival. Elena gripped my hand as we sat on our porch, listening to creek water flowing past sensors that would soon provide evidence ending 3 years of harassment forever. Tomorrow she makes her biggest mistake, Elena said, that steel in her voice I'd learned to love, and we'll catch every detail. The fog rolling through our valley that night felt like justice finally coming home. My vineyard expansion posts triggered Vivian's meltdown faster than bad code crashing a server. Monday morning brought an emergency HOA blast email that reeked of desperation through my computer screen. Urgent. Agricultural water crisis threatens community survival. Emergency meeting tonight 7 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Mandatory. Like she could force attendance at her personal panic attack. Elena laughed, reading it over my shoulder, the sound mixing with morning coffee and the sweet scent of grapes ripening outside our kitchen window. Honey, I think we broke her. That evening's emergency meeting was performance art in suburban hysteria. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and fierce sweat as Vivian stood before 47 homeowners explaining how our grapevines threatened civilization. This massive agricultural expansion represents an existential crisis for Ashworth Estates, she announced, her voice cracking like drought-damaged soil. Increased water consumption could leave our community without adequate supply during drought conditions. The mathematical irony was exquisite, Vivian describing exactly the problem her subdivision created while blaming the solution. Frank Kozlowski's weathered farmer voice cut through the hysteria. Vivian, his vineyard uses less water than your neighbor's swimming pool. Maybe check your facts before declaring agricultural war. Mr. Kozlowski, you don't understand modern resource management. Lady, I understand this valley's been growing food since before your great-grandmother was born. Tuesday brought escalation that crossed into environmental terrorism. Our monitoring sensors detected someone dumping concrete blocks into Millbrook Creek at 2:23 a.m., creating artificial restrictions to prove water shortage concerns. Security footage was prosecution-quality evidence. Vivian directing 3 HOA board members dumping construction debris into federally protected waterways. Environmental vandalism during peak growing season, violating clean water statutes that carried serious prison time. She just committed multiple felonies on camera, Rosa announced when I forwarded the footage. Environmental destruction, conspiracy to damage agricultural operations, federal waterway violations. EPA investigators will love this Christmas present. But Wednesday brought Vivian's most desperate gambit yet, attempting to bribe Frank Kozlowski. Frank called me that afternoon, his laughter mixing with the distant sound of his grandson's tractor work. "Owen, you'll never believe what just happened. Vivian offered me $50,000 to vote against your vineyard." "Please tell me you recorded that." "Son, Rosa's been having me wear a wire since this started, got every word." The audio was courtroom gold. Vivian offering cash payments plus favorable tax assessments through county connections in exchange for Frank's betrayal of agricultural neighbors. "Mr. Kozlowski, community prosperity requires difficult decisions," Vivian's voice explained with practiced corruption. "Your cooperation would be financially beneficial, and my county connections could resolve certain assessment complications." While we'd been gathering evidence, Vivian had escalated to federal bribery charges with recorded confession. Thursday's community warfare reached fever pitch. Ashworth Estates residents organized petition drives demanding immediate legal action against all agricultural families. Anonymous flyers appeared overnight. Valley farmers, environmental terrorists stealing our water. But our agricultural coalition was mobilizing with generational power. Frank's network included 4 generations of farming families plus newer agricultural advocates who'd chosen valley life over suburban conformity. Thursday evening's planning meeting drew 60 people representing 127 years of combined agricultural experience. "Time we reminded certain people what happens when you threaten food production," Frank announced, his voice carrying decades of valley authority. Friday brought Vivian's nuclear option, filing official county complaint claiming illegal agricultural water diversion threatening public safety. Emergency intervention required, her complaint read, excessive agricultural consumption during drought conditions endangering residential community water security. What Vivian didn't understand was that county investigation would require complete disclosure of all water rights documentation, making our Spanish land grant evidence part of official public record. "She just triggered the investigation that will destroy her entire scheme," Rosa explained, reviewing county response procedures. "Official water rights inquiry means all consumption data becomes discoverable evidence, including our monitoring proof of her subdivision's illegal usage." Saturday brought sabotage attempt number 3. Irrigation lines cut again, but this time our upgraded security system caught Vivian personally wielding bolt cutters at 4:17 a.m. High-definition footage showed the HOA president still wearing silk pajamas under a designer jacket, systematically destroying agricultural equipment during peak growing season. The contrast was perfect. Suburban privilege vandalizing rural survival. "She's completely unhinged," Elena observed, watching Vivian's BMW speed past our property for the 4th time that day, driving by like she's planning something. Sunday evening, Elena and I walked our vineyard listening to creek water flow past sensors documenting every drop Ashworth Estates consumed illegally. The fog rolling through grapevines carried the scent of justice approaching. "Tomorrow's the town hall meeting," I said, squeezing my wife's hand. "Time to explain to everyone exactly who owns what in this valley." Elena's smile carried 3 years of accumulated revenge. "I can't wait to see her face when she realizes what you've been debugging." Sunday night brought Vivian's most desperate play yet. An emergency restraining order filed at 11:47 p.m. claiming I posed imminent threat to community safety and property values. The court documents arrived Monday morning via sheriff's deputy, thick as a textbook and twice as ridiculous. Vivian alleged unstable behavior, potential violence against HOA members, and deliberate water theft endangering residential community survival. Water theft. The woman stealing creek water for 5 years was accusing me of theft for using my own legally owned resource. "Emergency hearing scheduled Wednesday," the deputy explained, his voice carrying professional skepticism. "Judge will determine if your agricultural operations pose public danger requiring immediate cessation." Rosa arrived within an hour, her immigration attorney instincts shifting into full warfare mode. She's betting everything on one massive lie, that you're dangerous and unstable. Classic desperation when legal facts don't support your position. But while Vivian played courtroom theater, Rosa's investigator had uncovered the smoking gun that would end this war permanently. "Oh, and sit down for this," Rosa announced Tuesday morning, spreading financial documents across our kitchen table like evidence of organized crime. "I found Vivian's bankruptcy filing, sealed records that explain everything. The papers told a story of spectacular financial collapse. $2.3 million debt to private investors who'd used HOA properties as collateral for Vivian's failed real estate ventures. When those investments crashed, she needed agricultural land conversion to justify property values supporting her debt obligations. Here's the beautiful part," Rosa continued, pointing to investor names that made my software engineer brain appreciate elegant system design. "Her primary creditor is Millbrook Valley Development Corporation, the same company that wants to buy agricultural properties for suburban expansion. The pattern was perfect corruption. Vivian borrowed money from developers, used HOA power to pressure agricultural families into selling below market value, then directed those properties to her creditors as debt payment. Classic conflict of interest disguised as community service." "There's more," Rosa said, her voice carrying prosecutorial satisfaction. "The development corporation includes County Supervisor Bradley Morrison's brother as primary investor. She's been using political connections to weaponize code enforcement against farming families. Tuesday afternoon brought media bombardment that transformed local HOA dispute into statewide agricultural rights story. Environmental reporter Sarah Finley from Bay Area News broke the exclusive. Water rights scandal exposes suburban development fraud in Sonoma Valley. The story had everything: corporate conspiracy, environmental crime, agricultural heritage under attack, suburban privilege threatening rural survival. Within hours, 3 television stations requested interviews. Perfect timing, Rosa observed, watching news coverage spread across social media. State Water Board announces formal investigation tomorrow, the day before emergency court hearing. Wednesday morning's revelation made everything else look like opening moves in chess game. County investigation confirmed what our monitoring systems had documented. Ashworth Estates consumed 340% more water than Millbrook Creek provided during dry seasons, with zero legal authority for any consumption. Environmental impact assessment shows unsustainable development built on fraudulent water assumptions, the county report concluded. Immediate residential water restrictions recommended pending resolution of historical water rights claims. Translation: 47 suburban houses faced potential water shutoff while our vineyard enjoyed drought protection as legally prioritized agricultural use. But Vivian's final desperation play made all previous harassment look like friendly suggestions. Wednesday afternoon, she arrived at our property with corporate lawyers from downtown firm specializing in agricultural land acquisition. Their black SUVs looked like funeral procession rolling up our gravel driveway. "Mr. Delacroix, I'm offering you one final opportunity to resolve this situation amicably," Vivian announced through our security gate, her voice carrying 3 years of accumulated hatred. "My clients are prepared to purchase your property for fair market value, eliminating all legal complications." Fair market value. Determined by whom, exactly? "Mrs. Ashworth, this property isn't for sale," Elena responded through our intercom system, her cancer survivor steel audible even through electronic speakers. "Mrs. Delacroix, you need to understand something." Vivian's mask finally slipped, revealing the entitled rage that had driven 3 years of harassment. "This valley has changed. People like you don't belong in modern agricultural communities. Accept our offer or face complete financial destruction." People like you. There it was again, the core of her entire campaign. Elena's response was pure poetry. "Mrs. Ashworth, people like us built this valley. People like you are just visiting." That evening, Rosa filed our nuclear option. Federal RICO lawsuit alleging organized conspiracy to defraud agricultural families through coordinated HOA harassment, unlicensed real estate practice, environmental crime, and political corruption. Racketeering charges, Rosa explained, organizing documentation that would bury Vivian's entire operation. When HOA power becomes systematic criminal enterprise, federal prosecutors get very interested. Thursday morning brought town hall meeting announcement that would determine this valley's future. Community Water Rights Forum, public input, required on historical agricultural versus modern residential priorities. 200 expected attendees, media coverage guaranteed, county supervisors attending, state water board representatives observing. Elena gripped my hand as we prepared for the final confrontation. Ready to show everyone who really owns this valley? Thursday evening, the Millbrook Community Center buzzed with electricity you could taste. 200 residents packed every seat while overflow crowds stood against walls decorated with 30-year-old agricultural fair ribbons. The air thick with anticipation, nervous sweat, and the lingering scent of Frank's diesel truck outside. Local TV crews positioned cameras like artillery, while County Supervisor Morrison sat front row with state water board representatives. Sheriff's deputies flanked the entrance, expecting trouble from what the Bay Area News had dubbed Sonoma Valley's water war. Vivian arrived fashionably late with her corporate legal team, designer heels clicking against linoleum like countdown timers. She wore courtroom white from head to toe, power suit, perfect hair, predatory smile that said she expected total victory. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, laser pointer ready for her final presentation. "Tonight, we address an agricultural crisis threatening every property investment in Millbrook Valley." Her PowerPoint was suburban theater at its finest. Property value charts, water consumption graphs, environmental impact studies proving our vineyard endangered community sustainability and residential prosperity. "This illegal agricultural expansion represents existential threat to Ashworth Estates," Vivian announced, clicking through slides showing our irrigation equipment labeled as industrial water theft systems. Mr. Delacroix's excessive consumption during drought conditions could leave 47 families without adequate water supply. The mathematical irony was exquisite, Vivian describing the exact crisis her subdivision created while blaming the solution. I stood slowly, feeling 200 pairs of eyes focused like laser targeting systems. "Mrs. Ashworth, may I respond to your presentation with some facts?" "Mr. Delacroix, you'll have opportunity during public comment." "Actually," interrupted County Supervisor Morrison, "given the serious allegations, I think immediate factual response is appropriate." I walked to the front with Rose's laptop containing 3 weeks of documented evidence, the taste of 3 years accumulated justice finally arriving. "Mrs. Ashworth claims our vineyard threatens community water security," I began, connecting laptop to projector while 200 people held their breath. "Let me show everyone what our monitoring systems actually discovered." The first slide dropped like a legal bomb. Real-time water consumption data showing Ashworth Estates using 340% more water than our agricultural operation during identical time periods. Gasps rippled through the audience as numbers painted mathematical truth across the community center screen. "Mrs. Ashworth's subdivision consumes 11,000 gallons daily for landscaping alone," I continued, each fact landing like precision strikes. "Our vineyard uses 3,700 gallons for actual food production, but the nuclear option was still coming. However, water consumption is irrelevant to tonight's real issue." I clicked to the next slide, Spanish land grant documents from 1847, official seals visible even in projection lighting. These are the original water rights for Millbrook Creek, granted by Mexican California government and recognized by United States treaty law. The silence was absolute. You could hear individual heartbeats. According to these documents, filed with Sonoma County in 1847 and never legally superseded, my property owns exclusive water allocation rights for this entire watershed. Elena stood from the front row, her voice carrying cancer survivor authority that commanded immediate attention. "Every drop flowing through Millbrook Creek belongs to our agricultural easement. Every house in Ashworth Estates has been using our water without permission for 5 years. The room exploded. Ashworth Estates residents shouting questions, farming families applauding, corporate lawyers whispering frantically into phones. County Supervisor Morrison banged his gavel like a judge restoring order. "Mr. Delacroix, are you claiming legal authority to restrict water access to residential community?" "I'm not claiming anything," I replied, clicking to our final slide. County investigation results confirming Spanish land grant validity. The State of California Water Board investigation concluded yesterday that historical agricultural water rights supersede all subsequent subdivision assumptions. "This is impossible," Vivian started. "Mrs. Ashworth," interrupted Frank Kozlowski, standing with recorded evidence that would end her career permanently. "Before you say anything else, everyone should hear this." Frank's ancient cassette player crackled to life, filling the community center with crystal-clear audio of Vivian offering bribes, threatening property tax retaliation, and describing agricultural families as "these people who don't understand modern economics." The recording played while TV cameras captured Vivian's face transforming from confident predator to cornered prey, realizing the trap had finally sprung. Sheriff's Deputy Martinez stepped forward as the audio concluded. "Mrs. Ashworth, you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery of public officials, and environmental vandalism. You have the right to remain silent." The community center erupted in chaos. Ashworth residents demanding answers, agricultural families cheering justice, corporate lawyers abandoning their client faster than rats leaving sinking ships. As handcuffs clicked around Vivian's wrists, I announced our final decision. Effective immediately, I'm establishing the Millbrook Valley Agricultural Water Trust. Every family, residential and agricultural, will have guaranteed water access through cooperative management, respecting historical rights and environmental sustainability. Elena squeezed my hand as applause thundered through the community center. "Debugging complete?" "System restored," I confirmed, watching justice finally compile without errors. 6 months later, Millbrook Valley looked like a completely different place, because it was. Vivian Ashworth pleaded guilty to federal conspiracy charges, paid $847,000 in restitution, and permanently lost her real estate license. The bankruptcy court unwound her fraudulent development scheme while federal prosecutors dismantled the entire political corruption network. County Supervisor Morrison's brother faced his own racketeering charges, but the real transformation was community healing that started the day after Vivian's arrest. Ashworth Estates residents organized volunteer crews helping repair irrigation damage their HOA president had caused. The same neighbors who'd filmed our agricultural violations now brought morning coffee while Elena and I tended grapevines that represented valley survival rather than property value threats. "I owe you an apology," admitted Jennifer Walsh, whose pristine white BMW had blocked our driveway during harassment campaigns. "Vivian convinced us you were destroying our investments. We never realized she was the actual threat." The new HOA board included Frank Kozlowski, 2 farming family representatives, and 3 Ashworth residents committed to agricultural cooperation rather than suburban domination, their first official act, dissolving all agricultural restrictions while establishing valley-wide water conservation programs. Elena's cancer survivor strength had found perfect purpose organizing the Millbrook Heritage Foundation, preserving agricultural history while teaching sustainable farming to suburban families discovering food production for the first time. 20 kids signed up for our youth agriculture program, Elena announced over breakfast, her smile carrying joy I hadn't seen since before the harassment began, including Vivian's neighbor's twins who want to learn grape growing. Our vineyard's first harvest produced 347 cases of Valley Unity Vintage, wine sales funding scholarship programs for agricultural education and conservation projects protecting Millbrook Creek for future generations. The technical solutions I'd developed became templates for agricultural communities across California. Arduino-based water monitoring systems, now open source through UC Davis extension programs, helped 12 valley communities document resource usage and establish cooperative management. The Millbrook Model, agricultural law professors called it, proof that historical rights and modern communities could coexist through transparent collaboration rather than bureaucratic warfare. Legal resolution protected everyone. Water rights formally recognized our agricultural priority while establishing graduated usage plans, ensuring residential communities maintained adequate supply through conservation and efficiency improvements. Federal drought protection designated Millbrook Valley as agricultural heritage zone, preventing future development pressure while supporting sustainable farming practices that fed communities rather than enriched developers. Personal healing proved the sweetest victory. Elena's health flourished as stress disappeared, her oncologist noting remarkable improvement during annual checkups. "Purpose heals like medicine," she told me, hands deep in soil that no longer represented battlefield but sanctuary. My software engineering skills found perfect application debugging agricultural systems, helping farming families optimize water usage, designing sustainable irrigation networks, creating cooperative management platforms that prevented future HOA tyranny. "You know what's funny?" Elena said one evening as we walked vineyard rows heavy with fruit destined for our second vintage. "Vivian thought agriculture was the problem. Turns out agriculture was the solution." The annual Millbrook Harvest Festival now draws 2,000 plus visitors, celebrating valley heritage through farm tours, wine tastings, and educational programs proving agricultural communities create prosperity rather than destroy it. Property values stabilized as heritage tourism developed, attracted by authentic agricultural experience rather than artificial suburban conformity. Ashworth Estates houses sell faster now, marketed as agricultural valley living rather than isolated suburban enclaves. Rosa established agricultural law practice helping farming families across California fight similar harassment campaigns. Vivian's case created legal precedent, she explained. HOA selective enforcement against agricultural families now faces federal civil rights scrutiny. Frank's grandson started organic farming operation on family land, fifth generation continuing agricultural tradition while incorporating modern sustainable techniques. Thanks to you folks, Frank said, this valley will keep feeding people for another 100 years. But the phone call that arrived last Tuesday reminded me our work wasn't finished. Mr. Delacroix, this is Janet Morrison from Grants Pass, Oregon. Our HOA is trying to ban backyard chickens, and we heard about your situation. Could you help us debug our problem? Elena laughed, hearing my response. Ma'am, send me your documentation. Let's see what kind of system errors we're dealing with. Outside our window, morning fog rolled through grapevines that had transformed from symbols of harassment into emblems of agricultural victory. Millbrook Creek flowed freely, nourishing community cooperation rather than funding corporate greed.
So that's how Oren turned his HOA president into a federal defendant. But the real lesson from Millbrook Valley goes way deeper than just one-man revenge. Markert could have done what most of us do when facing HOA harassment. Gotten angry, argue at meetings, maybe hire a lawyer to fight their petty rules. Instead, he did what great engineers do. He studied the entire system, found the root cause, and fixed it permanently. That 1847 Spanish land grant wasn't some lucky accident. It was sitting in courthouse record for 175 years, waiting for someone patient enough to dig through that payment instead of just complaining on Facebook. While Vivian was playing neighborhood dictator, Owen was playing chess, thinking not 3 moves ahead, but 3 years ahead. I know a lot of you watching have your own HOA nightmare stories. Maybe it's ridiculous fine for your workshop, or restriction on flying Old Glory, or some power-hungry board member who forgot their volunteer managing your community, not landlord controlling your life. Here was Owen understood that most people miss. Every corrupt system has fatal flaws, but only if you're willing to do the research instead of just getting emotional. What's your worst HOA abuse story? Drop it in the comment. And if this story gave you hope that regular Americans can still beat entitled police, hit that subscribe button hard. Remember, they are not your landlord. You are not your tenant. Start acting like it.